I'm Zoe Clark, 34, and I always thought family meant support, especially when it came to our downtown Denver real estate business. That was before I discovered how much they truly underestimated me. There I was, holding my head high, but forced to take the service elevator, while my own family used the grand entrance. Little did they know I was the actual owner of the entire building they disrespected me in. What I did next would change the family dynamics forever. Growing up as the youngest child in the Clark family had its challenges. My parents, Evelyn and Harold, built Clark Properties from nothing into a mid-sized real estate empire centered around a prestigious building in downtown Denver. From the beginning, it was clear they had different expectations for me compared to my older brother Marcus. Real estate is a man's world, Zoe, my mother would say with a tight smile whenever I expressed interest in the family business. Focus on something more suitable. So I did. I earned my marketing degree, worked my way up at various firms, and eventually landed a position as a marketing manager for a respected company. All the while, Marcus was being groomed to take over Clark Properties, attending board meetings and learning the ropes from our father. I remember the day Marcus got his corner office in the Clark Tower. I had stopped by to congratulate him, bringing a small plant as a housewarming gift. "Thanks, sis," he said, barely looking up from his computer. "Just leave it with my assistant on your way out." His wife, Vanessa, was arranging framed photos on his credenza. She glanced at me, her eyes sweeping over my business casual attire with thinly veiled disdain. "Don't you have somewhere to be, Zoe?" she asked. "Marcus has an important client coming in 15 minutes. That was how it always went. I was an afterthought, a footnote in the Clark family story. The parking garage attendant never recognized me, making me pay the visitor fee while Marcus and my parents had reserved spots with their names emblazoned on gold plaques. When I mentioned this to my father, he brushed it off. "Just park on the street if you don't want to pay," he said. "It's not like you come to the building that often anyway." The service elevator became my designated route whenever I visited. The first time I tried to use the main elevator, Vanessa happened to be in the lobby. "Oh, Zoe," she said loudly enough for the security guard to hear. "Family members who don't work for the company use the service elevator. It's policy." I knew it wasn't policy. It was just another way to remind me that I didn't belong. The pattern continued for years. I attended family dinners where business was discussed, only to be told, "This doesn't concern you, Zoe." I offered marketing suggestions for their properties, only to have them dismissed without consideration. I was family, but only when it was convenient. Then came the loan. Marcus approached me one evening after a family dinner, pulling me aside with an uncharacteristic warmth. "Zoe, I've been watching what you've been doing with your marketing career," he said, his arm around my shoulders. "Pretty impressive." I was stunned by the compliment. "Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. I'm actually working on a side project, a startup with some real potential." He continued, "I need some capital to get it off the ground, but I don't want to go through the family channels yet. I'd rather surprise Mom and Dad when it's successful." Something in my gut told me to be cautious, but years of seeking validation from my family overrode my instincts. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Just $20,000, he replied. "I'll pay you back within 6 months, with interest." I transferred the money the next day. 6 months came and went, then a year. Whenever I brought it up, Marcus had an excuse. The startup was still in development. The market was tough. He'd pay me back as soon as his next deal closed. Eventually, I stopped asking. Meanwhile, I had been quietly building my own path. After recognizing my talent for digital marketing specifically within the real estate sector, I launched my own agency, starting small. I took on projects from local realtors and property managers, steadily building a portfolio of successful campaigns. What my family didn't know, what I made sure they didn't know, was how successful I'd become. My agency had grown to handle marketing for some of the largest real estate developers in Colorado, ironically including Clark Properties. Though my parents and Marcus dealt with my company through my operations director, not me directly. The real turning point came when I connected with Thomas Ryder, a venture capitalist who specialized in real estate investments. We met at a networking event where I was presenting on digital marketing strategies for luxury properties. "Your approach is refreshing," he told me afterward. "Most marketers in real estate just recycle the same tired techniques." We began meeting regularly, discussing business over coffee. Thomas became a mentor of sorts, and eventually, a friend. When he mentioned an investment opportunity, a building in downtown Denver that was underperforming due to poor management, I was intrigued. "The current owners are looking to offload it quietly," Thomas explained. "With some strategic updates and proper marketing, its value could increase substantially within a few years." I recognized the address immediately. It was the Clark Tower, my family's prized possession and headquarters. "That can't be right," I said. "My family owns that building. They wouldn't sell without announcing it to everyone they know." Thomas looked confused. "According to my information, it's owned by a holding company called Riverside Investments. They've owned it for the past decade." This revelation stunned me. I knew my parents had faced financial difficulties during the recession, but they had always maintained that Clark Properties was stronger than ever. Had they been forced to sell the building but continued to operate as if they owned it? Was this why Marcus had been so desperate for cash that he'd borrowed from me? I hired a private investigator to discreetly look into the matter. What I discovered was even more shocking. Riverside Investments was indeed the owner, but they were considering selling due to consistent late payments from their primary tenant, Clark Properties. My family had lost ownership of the building years ago, but had created an elaborate facade to maintain appearances. They were essentially leasing their own empire, and now they were about to lose even that. Something shifted inside me. Years of dismissal and disrespect crystallized into a clear vision. I would buy the building, not out of spite, but because I saw its potential and, more importantly, because I could. Working with Thomas, I created a shell company called Everest Holdings LLC. Through careful negotiation and with backing from investors, Thomas connected me with. I purchased the Clark Tower for $12.7 million. The transaction was completed quietly, with no public announcement. As far as Riverside Investments was concerned, they were simply selling to another corporate entity. As the new owner, I could have immediately revealed myself and evicted Clark Properties. But that wasn't my goal. I wanted to understand the full scope of the situation, to see how deep the deception went. So I remained silent, collecting rent from my own family through intermediaries while continuing to be treated as an outsider whenever I visited. For nearly 2 years, I played this double role. My digital marketing agency continued to thrive, expanding to include clients across the country. I diversified my investments, becoming a silent partner in 3 upscale Denver restaurants: the Velvet Room, the Green Lantern, and Solace Bistro. My personal net worth grew to over $5 million, yet my family still saw me as the struggling black sheep who couldn't find her place in the world. During this time, I hired Jamie Santos as my executive assistant. Jamie quickly became more than an employee. She was my confidant, the one person who knew the full truth about my ownership of the Clark Tower and my relationship with my family. "I don't understand why you don't just tell them," she said one day as we reviewed the quarterly maintenance reports for the building. "You literally own the ground they walk on." I sighed. "It's complicated. Jamie, if I tell them now, they'll see it as an act of betrayal, not as the business decision it was. I need the right moment." That moment came sooner than I expected, in the form of the annual Clark family Christmas party. December 14th, 2024, was crisp and clear, the Denver skyline glittering with holiday lights as I approached the Clark Tower. The annual family Christmas party was being held in the penthouse, a lavish affair that my parents used to showcase the family's success to relatives, friends, and business associates. I had dressed carefully in a burgundy cocktail dress, elegant but understated. As I crossed the lobby toward the main elevator, I heard Marcus call my name. "Zoe, where do you think you're going?" I turned to find him striding toward me, Vanessa at his side in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "To the party," I replied. "I was invited, remember?" Marcus exchanged a look with Vanessa. You know, family members who don't work for the company use the service elevator. That's not a real policy, Marcus, I said, keeping my voice even. It is if I say it is, he retorted. I control 60% of the company shares, and you own nothing. If you want to attend this party, you'll use the appropriate entrance for someone of your position. Several guests were watching now, including our cousin Rachel and her husband. I felt heat rising to my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from simmering anger. Is there a problem? Our father's voice cut through the tension as he approached from the direction of the main elevator. Just reminding Zoe about the elevator policy, Marcus said smoothly. Dad glanced at me, then at the small crowd that had gathered. It's just an elevator. Zoe, don't make a scene at the Christmas party. In that moment, I had a choice. I could reveal everything: my ownership of the building, my successful business, the truth about their financial situation, but surrounded by curious onlookers and caught off guard by the confrontation, it didn't feel right. This wasn't the moment I had been waiting for. So I turned without another word and walked to the service elevator, passing the janitor who was loading cleaning supplies onto a cart. He gave me a sympathetic nod as I pressed the button for the penthouse. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of our family lawyer, Mr. Goodman, watching with an uncomfortable expression. He knew. Of course he knew. He had probably been the one to handle the paperwork when my parents lost the building. In the solitude of the service elevator, I felt my hands trembling, not from humiliation, but from a clarity that cut through years of self-doubt. They didn't just underestimate me, they erased me, made me invisible in my own family. The party was in full swing when I arrived. I plastered on a smile and made small talk with relatives, accepting a glass of champagne from a circulating waiter. Across the room, Marcus was holding court, gesturing expansively as he told some story that had his audience laughing appreciatively. Zoe! Darling! My mother appeared at my elbow, air-kissing near my cheek. I was beginning to think you weren't coming. Would you have noticed if I hadn't? I asked quietly. She blinked, momentarily thrown off her social autopilot. Don't be dramatic. Of course we would have noticed. Her eyes darted over my shoulder. Oh, I see the Hendersons have arrived. I must say hello. And just like that, she was gone, leaving me alone again. I drifted toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the spectacular view of downtown Denver. Below me stretched the city I loved, lights twinkling against the dark sky. Somewhere down there was my apartment, modest but comfortable, where I'd built my life outside the shadow of my family. Quite a view, isn't it? The voice belonged to Mr. Goodman, who had approached silently. It is, I agreed, not looking at him. Your brother seems to be enjoying his role as host, he observed, nodding toward Marcus, who was now leading a toast. He's always enjoyed being the center of attention. Mr. Goodman sipped his whiskey. Some people are so focused on appearance that they lose sight of reality. Our eyes met, and I knew this wasn't idle conversation. Reality has a way of asserting itself eventually, I replied. He nodded slowly. Indeed it does. If you ever need legal advice, Zoe, independent advice, my door is always open. Before I could respond, Marcus's voice boomed across the room, amplified by the microphone he'd picked up. If I could have everyone's attention, I'd like to make an announcement. The room quieted as all eyes turned to my brother. He was standing by the bar, one arm around Vanessa's waist. First, thank you all for coming to celebrate another successful year for Clark Properties, he began, raising his glass. As many of you know, we have some exciting developments planned for the coming year, and today, I'm thrilled to announce that Vanessa and I are expecting our first child in June. Cheers erupted around the room. My mother rushed forward to embrace them both, tears streaming down her face. A toast to the future of the Clark family, Marcus continued when the noise died down. To my son, yes, it's a boy, who will one day take his place as the third-generation leader of Clark Properties. More applause. I clapped politely, feeling strangely detached from the celebration. And speaking of family, Marcus went on, his eyes finding me in the crowd. "I'd like to acknowledge my sister, Zoe, who's with us tonight." Heads turned in my direction. I straightened my spine, maintaining a neutral expression. Zoe has always been, well, let's call her our family's charity case. Light laughter rippled through the room. While she couldn't quite find her footing in the real estate world, she's doing her own thing now. Marketing, right, Zoe? For small businesses or something? I didn't respond. My silence seemed to unnerve him slightly, but he pressed on. "Anyway, we keep her around. Let her use the service elevator." More laughter. "Because that's what family does. We take care of our own, even when they don't quite measure up." The room had grown uncomfortably quiet. I could feel people's embarrassment on my behalf, see them avoiding eye contact. "To family," Marcus finished, raising his glass once more. "All of us, even the ones who never quite find their place." There was scattered applause, notably less enthusiastic than before. My mother was frowning slightly at Marcus, while my father looked down at his shoes. I placed my untouched champagne on a nearby table and walked calmly to the service elevator. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. That night, in my apartment, I sat at my desk and pulled up the property deed for the Clark Tower on my computer. There it was in black and white. Everest Holdings, LLC. My company, my building. 2 years I'd waited, uncertain of what I was waiting for. Now I knew. I wasn't waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. I was waiting for the person I needed to become. Someone who didn't seek her family's approval or validation. Someone who made decisions based on business, not emotion. That night, I decided to reclaim my power. The next morning, I called Jamie and asked her to come to my apartment rather than the office. When she arrived, I outlined my plan. "I need you to gather some information," I told her. "Financial records for Clark Properties, specifically their payment history for rent and any correspondence about late payments. Also, I want copies of all the marketing work we've done for them. Campaigns, results, everything." Jamie nodded, taking notes. "What about your personal evidence? The things Marcus has said to you? The treatment you've received?" "I hadn't considered that." "What do you mean?" "Screenshots of family text messages, emails, maybe even recordings of conversations if you have them. If you're going to confront them, you should have a complete picture of the pattern of behavior." She was right. I'd been so focused on the business angle that I'd overlooked the personal element. "Good thinking. I'll compile what I have." Over the next few weeks, I methodically gathered evidence. Screenshots of family chat messages where Marcus made dismissive comments about me, emails where my suggestions for the business were ignored or belittled, financial records showing the $20,000 I'd lent Marcus, still unpaid after 3 years, and most importantly, documentation of my own success, client testimonials, revenue reports for my agency, investment returns, and of course, the property deed for the Clark Tower. I also consulted with a law firm, Morrison & Associates, that specialized in corporate family disputes. I wanted to ensure that everything I planned was legal and that I was protected from any potential retaliation. As I prepared, I learned that Marcus was planning a lavish celebration for his 40th birthday on February 22nd, 2025. The event would be held in the grand ballroom of the Clark Tower, my ballroom, and would include not just family but also business associates, friends, and even local media covering the prominent real estate family's celebration. It was perfect. If Marcus wanted an audience, I'd give him one. The weeks leading up to February 22nd were a blur of preparation. I rehearsed what I would say, practicing with Jamie to ensure I remained calm and composed. I worked with a stylist to find the perfect outfit, a black designer gown that projected confidence and authority. I even hired a speech coach to help me deliver my message effectively. All the while, I continued to interact with my family as if nothing had changed. I accepted the invitation to Marcus's party with a polite RSVP. I attended a family dinner where, as usual, I was largely ignored, except when Marcus asked if I could handle the social media for his birthday celebration. "I'm a bit busy with client work," I replied coolly. It's just a few posts, Zoe, he insisted. It's not like you're running some major operation. This would actually give you some exposure to important people. I simply smiled. I'll see what I can do. February 22nd. Arrived, crisp and clear. I spent the day at a spa, getting a massage and facial, having my hair and makeup done, not out of vanity, but as armor. Tonight, I needed to be impeccable. As evening fell, I dressed carefully in my black gown, applied a final touch of lipstick, and called for a car. The drive to the Clark Tower took only 15 minutes, but it felt like crossing a threshold between my old life and whatever would come after tonight. The grand ballroom was on the second floor, accessible from the main lobby via a sweeping marble staircase or the main elevator. As my car pulled up to the entrance, I took a deep breath. No service elevator tonight. The lobby was buzzing with activity as guests arrived for the party. I walked in confidently, nodding to the security guard who did a double take when he saw me heading for the main elevator. "Ms. Clark," he began hesitantly. "I believe family members who don't." "It's fine, Robert," I said, using his name from his badge. "Check your updated instructions." He looked confused but didn't stop me as I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the second floor. The ballroom was transformed for the occasion. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen. A small orchestra played in one corner. A bar had been set up along one wall, and servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I accepted a glass of champagne and moved through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with guests who seemed surprised to see me there, or perhaps surprised by my appearance. I caught sight of my parents near the center of the room. My mother was resplendent in a silver gown. My father distinguished in his tuxedo. They were speaking with an older couple I recognized as longtime investors in Clark Properties. Across the room, Marcus held court, Vanessa by his side in a form-fitting gown that showcased her small baby bump. He was laughing loudly, clearly already celebrating his milestone birthday. I checked my watch. It was almost time. I'd arranged for Jamie to arrive at exactly 7:30 p.m. with a special gift for Marcus, a presentation that would be projected on the large screen that had been set up for speeches and tributes. At 7:25, I made my way to the side of the room where Mr. Goodman stood alone, observing the festivities with a somewhat detached expression. "Good evening, Mr. Goodman," I said, approaching him. He turned, surprise registering on his face. "Zoe, I must say, you look formidable tonight." I smiled. "Thank you. I wanted to ask your professional opinion on something. When a tenant consistently pays rent late, what are the owner's options?" His eyebrows rose slightly. "Well, it depends on the lease agreement, but typically, the owner could issue warnings, charge late fees, or in cases of persistent delinquency, begin eviction proceedings. And if the tenant has misrepresented their status as owners rather than renters?" Mr. Goodman's expression shifted, understanding dawning in his eyes. "That would constitute fraud. A serious matter indeed." Before he could say more, I spotted Jamie entering the ballroom. Our eyes met, and she gave me a slight nod. Everything was ready. "If you'll excuse me," I said to Mr. Goodman, "I believe it's time for the birthday tribute." The orchestra finished their piece, and the MC, a friend of Marcus's from college, took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We're about to begin the formal program for tonight's celebration of Marcus Clark's 40th birthday." The crowd quieted, turning toward the small stage where the MC stood. "First, we'll hear from Harold Clark, Marcus's father and the founder of Clark Properties." My father made his way to the stage, accepting the microphone with a practiced smile. He spoke for about 5 minutes, reminiscing about Marcus as a child, praising his business acumen, and expressing pride in the man he'd become. It was the speech of a father who saw his son through rose-colored glasses, oblivious to the arrogance and entitlement he'd fostered. After my father, several business associates offered brief tributes. Then Vanessa took the stage, her voice syrupy sweet as she talked about their future together and the legacy Marcus would build. I moved quietly toward the side of the room where Jamie stood next to the AV technician. She handed me a small remote. "Everything's loaded," she whispered. "Just press this button when you're ready." The MC returned to the microphone. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a toast to the man of the hour, Marcus Clark." Marcus strode to the stage, accepting the microphone with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. He thanked everyone for coming, made a few jokes about turning 40, and then began to talk about the future of Clark Properties. As we look ahead to the next decade, I'm excited about the opportunities for expansion. The Clark Tower has been the cornerstone of our family business, and under my leadership, we'll continue to build on that foundation. That was my cue. I stepped forward, the remote in my hand. "Actually, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I'd like to add something to that." All heads turned toward me. Marcus looked annoyed at the interruption. "Zoe, we're in the middle of something here," he said into the microphone. "If you have a toast, you can wait your turn." "This isn't a toast," I replied, pressing the button on the remote. The large screen behind Marcus flickered to life, displaying a property deed for the Clark Tower. The owner was clearly listed: Everest Holdings, LLC. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, squinting at the screen. "The truth," I said, walking toward the stage. Jamie handed me a microphone of my own. "Everest Holdings, LLC is my company. I've owned this building, the Clark Tower, for the past 2 years. A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus's face flushed red. "That's impossible," he sputtered. "This is some kind of joke." I pressed the remote again. The screen changed to show bank transfer records, the purchase agreement, all with my signature. "No joke, Marcus. While you've been playing the role of successful real estate mogul, you've actually been my tenant, and not a very good one. I might add, your rent has been late 4 times in the past year alone." The murmuring grew louder. I could see my parents frozen in shock, my mother's hand at her throat. Where did you get the money?" Marcus demanded, his voice cracking slightly. I pressed the remote again. Now the screen displayed the website of my digital marketing agency, along with client testimonials and revenue figures. "I built a successful business while you were busy dismissing me as the family charity case. My agency handles marketing for some of the largest real estate developers in Colorado, including, ironically, Clark Properties. You've been paying me twice, once for marketing services and once for rent." I turned to face the crowd, many of whom were watching with fascinated horror, like spectators at a car crash. "For years, I've been forced to use the service elevator in this building. I've been denied access to family business discussions. I've been publicly humiliated and privately dismissed." Another click of the remote, and the screen showed screenshots of family chat messages where Marcus had made cutting remarks about me. "Just last week, Marcus asked me to handle the social media for tonight's event because," and I quote, "it's not like you're running some major operation. That minor operation generated $3.7 million in revenue last year." I could see my father's face had gone pale, while my mother looked as if she might faint. Vanessa was clutching Marcus's arm, her expression a mixture of shock and calculation. "I'm not here for revenge," I continued, my voice steady. "I'm here for recognition. I own this building. I run a successful business, and I will no longer be treated as less than I am." Marcus finally found his voice. "This is illegal. You must have tricked someone, or forged documents, or—" "Every transaction was completely legal," I interrupted. "Ask Mr. Goodman. He's known the truth for quite some time, haven't you?" All eyes turned to the family lawyer, who cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The transactions appear to be in order. Yes, Ms. Clark acquired the building through legitimate channels." "This is family business, Zoe," my father said, his voice shaking with either anger or fear. "You should have come to us if you had concerns, not ambushed us like this." "I tried, Dad, for years. I tried to be included, to be respected, to be heard. You chose not to listen." I pressed the remote one more time. The screen now showed a montage of my achievements. awards my agency had won, restaurants I'd invested in, the successful refurbishment of another building I'd purchased in Boulder. Starting tomorrow, there will be changes. Clark Properties will sign a new lease agreement at fair market value. You'll have 30 days to address all outstanding maintenance issues that you've neglected, and if you want to continue operating from this building, you will treat me with the respect I've earned. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the back, a slow clap began. It was Jamie, her face beaming with pride. Gradually, others joined in, mostly younger guests and some of the business associates who weren't directly tied to my family. Marcus stepped down from the stage, his face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed as he passed me. "You have no idea what you've done." Vanessa hurried after him, pausing only to give me a look that could have frozen lava. My parents remained where they were, seemingly unable to process what had happened. Mr. Goodman approached me, a bemused expression on his face. "That was quite a presentation. Ms. Clark, if you need legal representation for the new lease agreements, I'd be happy to recommend someone. I suspect my relationship with your family might be somewhat strained after tonight." I smiled. "Thank you. Mr. Goodman, I appreciate your honesty, if not your earlier silence." As the initial shock wore off, the party atmosphere slowly returned. Some guests left quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. Others lingered, drawn by curiosity or the undeniable entertainment value of the evening's unexpected turn. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from some and fielding curious questions from others. A reporter from the local business journal who'd been invited to cover the birthday celebration asked if I'd be willing to do an interview about my business success. "I think that could be arranged," I replied with a smile. Eventually, I found myself at the bar, where Jamie joined me. "You were magnificent," she said, ordering champagne for both of us. The look on Marcus's face when he realized, "I wish I'd taken a picture." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. It wasn't about his reaction, though that was admittedly satisfying. It was about finally claiming my place. "To claiming your place," Jamie said, raising her glass. We clinked glasses just as my mother approached, her expression unreadable. "Zoe," she said stiffly, "your father and I would like to speak with you privately." I glanced at Jamie, who squeezed my arm in silent support before discreetly moving away. "Of course," I replied, following my mother to a small anteroom off the main ballroom. My father was waiting there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Marcus was notably absent. "How could you do this?" my mother began as soon as the door closed behind us. "Humiliate your brother at his birthday celebration? Undermine our family business in front of everyone?" I took a measured breath. The humiliation was his choice, not mine. As for undermining the business, I've done the opposite. I've secured its future by providing a stable home for it, despite your financial difficulties. "We've never had financial difficulties," my father blustered, but his eyes slid away from mine. "Dad, please, I know you lost ownership of the building during the recession. I know you've been leasing it back and pretending nothing changed. What I don't understand is why you couldn't just be honest about it." My parents exchanged glances. Something unspoken passed between them. "Your grandfather built this company from nothing," my father said finally. "His name is on that cornerstone downstairs. To lose the flagship building, it would have destroyed him, and it nearly destroyed me." "So you created a fiction," I said, "and made Marcus the crown prince of a kingdom that didn't exist anymore." "Marcus has worked hard," my mother insisted. "He's dedicated his life to this company." "While being paid handsomely for it," I pointed out. "I'm not saying he hasn't worked. I'm saying he hasn't earned the right to treat me, or anyone, the way he does." My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. "What happens now, Zoe? Are you going to evict us? Destroy everything we've built?" "No, Dad. As I said out there, this isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. I want a seat at the table I now own. I want Clark Properties to succeed, but as a company where merit matters more than birth order or gender." "And if we refuse?" my mother asked, her chin lifting defiantly. Then you'll find another building to lease, and I'll find other tenants. Business is business. After all, isn't that what you've always told me? The silence stretched between us, taut with decades of unspoken feelings and unresolved tensions. Finally, my father nodded slowly. We'll need to discuss this as a family, with Marcus. Of course, I agreed. But understand that the final decision about the building is mine. I'm willing to be fair, but I won't be dismissed or undervalued anymore. My mother's lips thinned, but she nodded curtly. We'll be in touch. As they left, I remained in the anteroom for a moment, collecting myself. I'd imagined this confrontation countless times over the past 2 years, but the reality was both more satisfying and more emotionally draining than I'd anticipated. When I returned to the ballroom, I found it had largely emptied out. The orchestra was packing up their instruments, and servers were clearing the abandoned glasses and plates. Jamie was waiting by the door, my coat draped over her arm. "Ready to go?" she asked. I took a last look around the ballroom, my ballroom, in my building. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." We took the main elevator down to the lobby. As the doors opened, I spotted Marcus standing by the front entrance, deep in conversation with someone I recognized as Richard Turner, one of his closest business associates. They both turned as we approached. "Richard, if you'll excuse us," Marcus said tightly. "I need a word with my sister." Richard nodded, giving me a curious look before walking away. "That was quite a performance," Marcus said, his voice low and controlled. "I hope you're pleased with yourself." "It wasn't a performance, Marcus, it was the truth." "The truth?" he scoffed. "You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate me." "No, I've been building a business for years. The purchase of this building was a sound investment, not some elaborate revenge scheme." He stepped closer, his eyes cold. "You think you can just waltz in and take over? You know nothing about running a real estate company." "I know enough not to lose the flagship building," I replied evenly. "And I know enough to pay my rent on time." His face flushed. "This isn't over, Zoe. Not by a long shot." "You're right about that," I agreed. "It's just beginning. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the new lease terms." I moved past him toward the door, but he caught my arm. "That $20,000 you lent me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Consider it your first and last investment in my new venture. I'm leaving Clark Properties, starting fresh, without the family name or the family baggage." I studied his face, trying to gauge his sincerity. "I wish you luck, Marcus. I really do." He released my arm. "I won't need luck. Unlike some people, I don't have to resort to underhanded tactics to succeed." With that parting shot, he strode back into the building, leaving me and Jamie standing in the cool night air. "Well," Jamie said after a moment, "that was intense." I smiled ruefully. "Welcome to the Clark family dynamics." My car was waiting at the curb. As Jamie and I settled into the back seat, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Triumph, yes, but also a certain melancholy. Tonight had been necessary, but it had also irrevocably changed my relationship with my family. Whether that change would ultimately be for better or worse remained to be seen. "Where to?" the driver asked. I thought for a moment. "The Velvet Room, please." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "Celebrating?" "Just hungry," I replied. "It's been a long evening." The Velvet Room was one of the restaurants I'd invested in, an upscale establishment known for its excellent food and discreet service. As a silent partner, I rarely visited, preferring to let the talented management team handle the day-to-day operations. When we arrived, the maitre d' recognized me immediately. "Ms. Clark, welcome. We weren't expecting you this evening." "It was a spontaneous decision," I explained. "Do you have a table for 2 available?" "For you? Always." He snapped his fingers, and a server appeared to escort us to a private booth in the back. Once we were settled with menus and a bottle of wine, Jamie raised her glass. "To the new owner of the Clark Tower." I clinked my glass against hers. "To new beginnings." As we enjoyed our meal, I found myself thinking about the future. Tomorrow, I would need to meet with my lawyers to draft the new lease agreement for Clark Properties. I would need to decide how involved I wanted to be in the management of the building, and I would need to prepare for the fallout from tonight's revelation, both within my family and in the broader business community. "You're lost in thought," Jamie observed, bringing me back to the present. "Just planning next steps," I admitted. "Always the strategist," she said with a smile. "But maybe tonight, you could just enjoy the moment?" She was right. I'd spent years working toward this night, this recognition. I deserved to savor it, if only for a few hours. The next morning, I woke to a flurry of notifications on my phone. News of what had happened at Marcus's birthday party had spread quickly through Denver's business community. My professional social media accounts had gained thousands of new followers overnight. My email inbox was flooded with interview requests from local business publications and congratulatory messages from colleagues and clients. There was also an email from my father, sent at 3:47 a.m. The subject line simply read, "Meeting." The body of the email was equally terse. "Zoe, we need to discuss next steps as a family. Clark Properties Boardroom, 10 a.m. today. Harold." I replied with a simple, "I'll be there," then called Jamie to brief her on what had happened at the party after she'd left and to let her know about the meeting. "Do you want me to come with you?" she offered. "No, this is something I need to do alone, but thank you." I dressed carefully for the meeting, choosing a tailored navy suit that projected professionalism without being intimidating. Power dressing had its place, but today wasn't about asserting dominance. It was about finding a way forward. At 9:55 a.m., I walked into the lobby of the Clark Tower. The security guard, Robert, greeted me with a newfound respect. "Good morning, Ms. Clark. The boardroom is ready for your meeting." "Thank you, Robert," I replied, heading for the main elevator without hesitation. When I arrived at the boardroom, my parents were already there, along with Mr. Goodman and, to my surprise, Vanessa. Marcus was notably absent. "Where's Marcus?" I asked as I took a seat across from them. "He's taking some time," my father replied. "Last night was difficult for him." "I see," I said neutrally. "Shall we begin?" "Mr. Goodman cleared his throat. "Before we start, I should clarify my role here. I've advised the Clark family for many years, but given the current circumstances, there's a potential conflict of interest. I'm here primarily as a facilitator today." I nodded. "That's reasonable." "First," my father began, "we want to acknowledge that you've achieved something remarkable. Zoe, purchasing this building was, well, it was a significant accomplishment." Coming from him, this was tantamount to effusive praise. I inclined my head in acknowledgement but remained silent. "That said," he continued, "the manner in which you chose to reveal this information was problematic." "Harold," Mr. Goodman interjected gently, "perhaps we should focus on the path forward rather than relitigating last night's events." My father's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Very well, Zoe. What are your intentions regarding Clark Properties' lease?" "I intend to offer a fair market value lease with standard terms," I replied. "I've had a preliminary agreement drafted, which I can share with you today for review." I removed a folder from my briefcase and slid it across the table. My father opened it, scanning the first page with a frown. "This represents a 15% increase over our current rate," he noted. "The current rate was negotiated 5 years ago and is well below market value for comparable properties in this area," I pointed out. "I'm actually offering a more favorable rate than you'd get elsewhere, given the building's age and needed updates." "Updates?" my mother echoed. "What updates?" "The HVAC system needs a complete overhaul. The lobby could use modernization, and there are several structural issues that have been deferred for too long." I placed another folder on the table. "Here's the inspection report." They exchanged glances. I could see the realization dawning that I had done my homework thoroughly. "And if we can't afford these new terms?" Vanessa asked, speaking for the first time. I met her gaze steadily. Then you'll need to find alternative arrangements. But I think if you review your finances carefully, you'll find the terms are manageable. This feels like extortion, my mother said, her voice tight. It's business, I corrected her. The same business principles that this family has applied to others for decades. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. My father was still reading through the lease agreement, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. You've included a clause here about joining the board of Clark Properties, he said. I nodded. Yes, as I said last night, this isn't about revenge, it's about recognition. I want a seat at the table. You own a marketing agency, Vanessa pointed out. That's hardly qualification for serving on the board of a real estate company. I own this building, I replied calmly. I've invested in 3 successful restaurants and another commercial property in Boulder. I understand real estate, finance, and marketing. I believe I can add value to Clark Properties. And if we refuse? My father asked. Then that would be the board's prerogative, but it would factor into my decisions about the long-term leasing of this building. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implication. I wasn't threatening them outright, but I was making it clear that our business relationship would influence our family relationship, not the other way around. After a long moment, my father nodded slowly. We'll need time to review these documents and discuss them as a board, but speaking personally, I think your terms are not unreasonable. Thank you, I said, genuinely surprised by his concession. I'm available to answer any questions or discuss modifications once you've had time to review everything. As the meeting concluded, my mother remained seated while my father and Vanessa gathered their things. Could I have a moment with Zoe? She asked them. They nodded and left, followed by Mr. Goodman, who gave me an encouraging nod as he closed the door behind him. My mother and I sat in silence for a moment. Despite her perfectly coiffed hair and elegant outfit, she looked older today, the lines around her eyes more pronounced. I've never understood you, Zoe, she finally said. Even as a child, you were different, independent, questioning. Is that a bad thing? I asked. It made it difficult to know how to guide you, she replied. Marcus was always so clear about what he wanted, to follow in his father's footsteps, to take over the family business. But you never seemed to fit into the path we had envisioned. Did you ever consider that I might have my own path? She sighed. We wanted to protect you from disappointment. Real estate can be brutal, especially for women. We thought you would be happier doing something else. But you never asked me what would make me happy, I pointed out. You decided for me. Perhaps that was a mistake, she admitted, surprising me with her candor. Seeing what you've accomplished on your own, it's clear we underestimated you. Coming from my mother, this was as close to an apology as I was likely to get. I reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. It's not too late to start over, I said, to build a different kind of relationship. She didn't respond directly, but she didn't pull her hand away either. After a moment, she stood and smoothed her skirt. Your father and I will review the lease agreement, she said, back to business, and we'll discuss your board position at the next meeting. I nodded, recognizing that this was as much progress as I could expect for now. Thank you. After she left, I remained in the boardroom, looking out at the Denver skyline. So much had changed in the past 24 hours, yet in some ways, nothing had changed at all. My family was still my family, with all their flaws and complexities. The difference was that now, I had claimed my place in that family and in the business world on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. How did it go? I smiled as I typed my reply. Better than expected. I think this might be the beginning of something new. Over the next few weeks, events unfolded rapidly. The Clark Properties Board, after much discussion, I was told, voted to accept the new lease terms and to appoint me as a non-executive director, giving me the seat at the table I'd requested. Marcus returned from his self-imposed exile with a surprising proposition. He wanted to buy out my share of the digital marketing agency. He planned to integrate it into a new venture he was creating, separate from Clark Properties. I've been thinking about branching out for some time. He explained during our meeting in a neutral coffee shop downtown. Last night's revelation just accelerated my timeline. I studied him carefully. Why my agency specifically? There are others you could acquire. He hesitated, then gave me a rueful smile that seemed more genuine than any expression I'd seen on his face in years. Because yours is the best. Your client list is impressive, and your results speak for themselves. Coming from Marcus, this acknowledgement was significant. I didn't immediately reject the idea, but I didn't agree either. I told him I'd consider it and get back to him. When I discussed it with Jamie later, she was skeptical. You built that agency from nothing. Why sell it now, when it's thriving? It's not about the money, I admitted. It's about what I want to focus on going forward. The agency demands a lot of attention, and if I'm going to be involved with Clark Properties as well. She nodded thoughtfully. You can't do everything. Exactly. And honestly, there's a part of me that thinks it might be good for Marcus to have something of his own, separate from the family legacy. The question is whether you trust him to treat your employees well and continue what you've built. Jamie pointed out. It was a valid concern. In the end, I decided to propose a gradual transition. Marcus would initially purchase a 30% stake in the agency, with an option to buy the remaining shares over a 3-year period. This would give me time to assess how he handled the business and would protect my employees from any abrupt changes. To my surprise, he agreed readily to these terms. I know I need to earn your trust, he said when we met to sign the preliminary agreement. This is a start. Meanwhile, the news of my ownership of the Clark Tower had created a buzz in Denver's business community. I received invitations to join various professional organizations and to speak at business events. A local magazine wanted to profile me for their Women in Business issue. At first, I was hesitant to step into the spotlight. I'd always been content to work behind the scenes, letting my results speak for themselves. But Jamie convinced me that visibility had its advantages. Think of all the other women who might be inspired by your story, she urged. Plus, it never hurts to raise your profile when you're joining a board. She was right. Of course, I agreed to a limited number of speaking engagements and interviews, focusing on topics I was passionate about: entrepreneurship, diversification of investments, and the importance of marketing in real estate. One evening, about 6 weeks after the revelation at Marcus's birthday party, my parents invited me to dinner at their home. It was the first such invitation I'd received in months, and I accepted with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. We avoided discussing business directly, focusing instead on neutral topics: a book my mother had recently read, a fishing trip my father was planning, a charity event they were attending the following weekend. As we lingered over coffee in the living room, my father cleared his throat. Zoe, there's something I've been meaning to give you. He went to his study and returned with a small wooden box that I recognized as having belonged to my grandfather. This was your grandfather's first dollar, he explained, opening the box to reveal an old framed dollar bill. He kept it as a reminder of where he started. When he gave it to me, he said it should go to the person who best embodied his entrepreneurial spirit. He held the box out to me. I think that person is you. I accepted the box with hands that trembled slightly, understanding the significance of the gesture. This wasn't just a family heirloom. It was an acknowledgement, a recognition of my place in the family legacy. Thank you, I said simply, unable to find more eloquent words through the emotion tightening my throat. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. We're proud of you, Zoe. It took us too long to say it, but we are. That night, as I placed my grandfather's first dollar on the mantel in my apartment, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the marketing manager who was forced to use the service elevator to the business owner who had claimed her rightful place, it had been a path marked by determination, strategic thinking, and ultimately, self-belief. The next morning, I arrived at the Clark Tower early. Instead of going directly to my office in another building downtown, I took the main elevator to the observation deck on the top floor. As I looked out over the city awakening in the early light, I felt a profound sense of peace. This building, with its glass and steel, its elevators and offices, its history and future, was more than just a property investment. It was a symbol of what I had accomplished and what was still to come. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. "Ready for the board meeting?" I smiled as I typed my reply. "Absolutely. I'm already in the building." Then I added, "I took the main elevator.